Our next story is about rising tensions between the United States and one of its most important allies, especially when it comes to the United States reorienting itself to the Pacific Ocean and to China, which is Australia. These countries have a long history of working very closely together. And yet, as a result of the growing resentment in Australia over the United States' persecution of the Australian citizen Julian Assange, there is starting to appear in public some visible tension, which is very rare. And so you can only imagine how extreme it must be in order for it to emerge in public. The context, as you probably know, is that Julian Assange is currently in his 5th year of being held in a prison in the UK, a very high security prison that the BBC has called the British Guantanamo, where he is not convicted of any crime. He is being held pending his extradition request to the United States, which has accused him of multiple felonies, including under the Espionage Act of 1917, the same law they're using to prosecute Trump in the Mar-a-Lago document case, for the reporting that WikiLeaks did in 2010, proving that the United States and its allies committed multiple war crimes around the world. That is the criminal charge that they are extraditing him to the United States to stand trial for in a Northern Virginia courthouse, just like they want to put Trump in Manhattan and DC. They want to put Julian Assange in Northern Virginia, the home to Raytheon and the U.S. security state and the arms industry, under a law where there's basically no defense. And so the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has been saying all year long, for the first time Australia is standing up for its citizens, saying, enough is enough. This has gone on for way too long. We want you to release our citizen and let him come back home. Anthony Blinken made a trip this weekend to Australia. And I have to say, I've been wondering whether the Australian position, openly disputing what the United States is doing, was essentially a way out for the United States, which I don't think wants to bring Julian Assange to American soil. Imagine the press brouhaha that is going to be generated around him standing trial, the things he can say if he takes the stand, the fact that Joe Biden will have on his record the first ever prosecution of a publisher, not a leaker, under the Espionage Act, the fact that foreign leaders in foreign countries will use this against the United States forever, the fact that we're putting on trial somebody for the crime of journalism. And Anthony Blinken went to Australia, and I thought that might be a chance to announce an agreement. And instead, Blinken very publicly said, we understand your position, but we don't accept it. We're not releasing Assange. We're going to prosecute him. Here from the Associated Press today, the headline there you see it on the screen, Australia's Prime Minister stands firm against the U.S. on WikiLeaks founder's prosecution. The article reads, quote, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said Tuesday his government stands firm against the United States over the prosecution of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, an Australian citizen fighting extradition from Britain on U.S. espionage charges. Albanese's center-left Labour Party government has been arguing since winning the 2022 elections that the United States should end its pursuit of the 52-year-old, who has spent 4 years in a London prison fighting extradition. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken pushed back against the Australian position during a visit Saturday, saying Assange was accused of, quote, very serious criminal conduct in publishing a trove of classified U.S. documents more than a decade ago. On Tuesday, the Australian Prime Minister said, quote, this has gone on long enough. This has gone on for too long, rather. Enough is enough. He told reporters that Blinken's public comments echoed points made by President Joe Biden's administration during private discussions with Australian government officials. Quote, we remain very firm in our view and our representations to the American government and will continue to do so, Albanese added. Assange, whose freedom is widely seen as a test of Australia's leverage with the Biden administration, was discussed in annual bilateral meetings in Brisbane, Australia last week between Blinken and Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong. So there's a lot going on in terms of the Australian relationship with the U.S. The U.S. is increasingly reliant on an alliance between the UK, Australia, and the U.S. to pressure and encircle China in the Pacific Sea, along with the Philippines and South Korea and Japan. And the United States wants a big commitment from Australia, which is obviously in much greater proximity to China and those countries in the Pacific than the United States is. And Australia is essentially saying, one of the things we want from you is to release our citizen. I think it's starting to embarrass the government that they appear very impotent in standing up to the United States. They can't even get their own citizen released, while the United States is demanding all sorts of concessions that Australia accept to serve the U.S. agenda of increasing the pressure on China and the Pacific. Now, I don't know if we have the video. Do we have this video of the news report? So we don't have a video, but there was a news report in Australia, and the tenor of it, the tone of it, was actually quite hostile, where the news anchor was speaking about the United States as this kind of hostile nation in a way that's very rare for Australia, that tends to have a very pro-US mentality. And so I've been hoping for a long time that this pressure being applied by a US ally, a Prime Minister of Australia, would help Assange finally find a way out. It doesn't seem, though, like the US government is even close to willing to consider that. They hate Assange. They want to destroy him. I think they want to kill him. They want him to die in US custody, even though they come very close to breaking him already, because they're so vindictive and they want to set an example to other people who might oppose the US government and the security state and spread its secrets, that maybe we let Edward Snowden get away, and maybe President Obama commuted the sentence of Chelsea Manning, although after 8 years of a hardcore prison, I visited her in that military brig in Kansas, that was no joke. But Assange, we're going to make sure he's destroyed because he's been thumbing his nose at us for too long. And they seem very determined to do that. So we're certainly going to continue to follow the events and report on them as we've been doing for quite some time. But I think this Australia aspect is a very interesting component because it shows you how willing the US is even to alienate their own critical ally in order to make sure that Assange never walks free. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.